What is going on, everyone? This is the Standing Room Only podcast, episode number 25. Uh,
25.
yeah, still we're in our home recording setups. If you guys don't follow us on social media, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at SR Only Pod. And you can follow our personal pages at, for me, the Healy 6.
And then for myself, I am iGoose. That's with four O's. As always, don't ask why. I am on Instagram. I'm on Twitter too. I'm not as actively available, or I'm not always on Twitter. But I do get notifications when there's any sports news. I'm usually on there retweeting, liking, whatever I could. So feel free to go ahead and follow our personal. And of course, as Healy just said, you can follow us Instagram, Twitter for SR Only Pod. And then, of course, the most important, our streaming services. We are
Yeah.
on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, download. Download's huge for us. That's the only number that we see.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, that's where we see all the love. So
Yeah, we only see the downloads, so we don't know how many active people are actually listening to the podcast. So this week, if you guys don't normally download the episode, download it so we could try to get an accurate number of how many people are listening to it this week. I also have a cool thing. I was streaming over the weekend, and I did have a couple people roll in and say that they did love the podcast. So that's cool that I'm seeing people coming to my streams and just tell me that they enjoy listening to the podcast in general. Awesome to hear.
that's awesome. This is my first time hearing that. So any feedback is pretty cool. I've always heard it from people that I personally know. So, you got like friends, family,
Yeah.
girlfriend's family, and then people they hear that they try to pass it along to. And I mean, we've always had good feedback, which is awesome, but the more the merrier, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and that's a little more biased here and there because they're going to like you more in general. So if you guys have any feedback that we don't personally know, you can always add us on the social media pages and see it there. But
Yes, yes. We're pretty interactive on there. So
starting off this week, we're going with the normal schedule. We're going to talk a little bit about MLB. There is some news about it actually happening this year. Seems like it'll happen. We don't know exactly when, but it's a good sign hearing people talk about baseball in general and sports, and they're saying like it'll probably happen. It'll just be without any fans.
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is, because so many events are already canceled because of this, because of the unknown of the future. Usually with a virus, something like this is like worst case scenario. Baseball, most sports actually, because they even mentioned with basketball, but sticking with baseball, but like they're gonna get teams together. I think they were gonna coordinate. They all stay in the same hotel. They try to play at the same field.
Hmm.
As you mentioned, no fans. And I think if they can do it safely, then they should definitely do it. For one, these guys want to play ball. For two, the fans want to watch it. I mean, no sports. I'm going crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. If there was episodes like The Last Dance every week, I might be able to make way. But without sports, life is a little boring, and trying my best to stay sane. So if they could do anything to bring baseball back, especially, I'd love that.
And sticking with baseball, the only thing that's happening right now is the MLB Players League. So we
Yes,
talked about this
sir.
a little earlier. Now there's one day left, and then the playoffs happen. If you guys have not caught any of the games and whatever, there is going to be tomorrow or today, whenever you're listening to this, Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2, the final two games of the regular season for the MLB The Show Players League. You have Lance McCullers and the Astros going up against Tommy Kahnle and the Yankees. And then you have Lucas Giolito for the White Sox going up against Amir Garrett of the Cincinnati Reds. This is a big day. They picked great matchups to be played on Wednesday because Lucas Giolito, he wins, he's in the playoffs. Tommy Kahnle, he wins, he has a chance of making the playoffs. So Giolito and Kahnle are the 8 and 9 seed right now. The top 8 seeds make it. And They need to win their games in order to make the playoffs. That's on ESPN2. If you guys want to watch the actual playoffs, once everything's settled, Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, you can watch it on Fox Sports 1. Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, you can watch the other quarterfinals games, and then there's a semifinals game on ESPN2, 3 p.m. Eastern. Saturday as well at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sport or FS1 is the other semifinal matchup. And then Sunday on ESPN, don't have a time, but ESPN, the championship. These are best of 3 matchups and then best of 5 for technically the World Series. Already clinching the playoff spot. You have Blake Snell, Joey Gallo, Bo Bichette, Jeff McNeil, Dwight Smith Jr. with the Orioles. That's a surprise. Nice. And then Ian Happ with the Cubs. Gavin Lux, so they played 29 games each. Play 1 game against every other team. Gavin Lux is 19-10. He has not clinched a playoff spot, as Giolito and Canely are 18-10 each. If both of them win, Gavin Lux gets pushed out of the playoffs.
Wow.
So I'm probably going to tune in.
There's some suspense. There's some suspense here. This is awesome. I think what we have to do, Healy, I think you just got to work your magic, and I think we should get the champion on the podcast. I don't know if we can do it, but that sounds really fun. So it's basically the playoffs are going to be started and completed in the weekend. Yeah. Best of 3, best of 5 for the World Series.
3 inning games.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Who do you have your money on if you had a bet?
Right now, the number 1 seed, oh man, Joey Gallo demolished people. I'm not going to go with him though, just because oh man. So the Rangers are good in the game. The ratings aren't good, but like how they play in the game is great. I'm probably going to have to stick with the number 1 seed, Blake Snell, though. Especially in best of 3s and best of 5s. Blake Snell streams daily, and he plays on the higher difficulties of the game. In this tournament, they're playing on the lower end, and this dude plays every day on like hard difficulties, playing good players. So in a best of 3, I don't see him messing up.
So Blake Snell, he's about that life.
The Rays are good in the game.
Yeah. He probably just pitch with himself every game. Is that what he does?
There's stamina, so you have to pick and choose who you play.
Oh, okay. So it's like an actual league. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, stamina affects everything, so you can only pitch yourself however many games it takes. But, oh, man. Joey Gallo is my guy because, like I said, the Rangers were so good. He was scoring runs left and right. But I think Blake Snell has turned it around. I think he'll win.
Okay, I'm going to have to tune in for that.
Dwight Smith Jr. with the Orioles, though. Orioles. Super bad team. He might have scored, I think, the most runs in the league.
No way.
He dominated.
That's wild. See, it's on Sunday, too. So what network is it on?
So Friday, it's going to be on FS1 at 10 p.m. Eastern. Saturday, it's on 2 different networks. 3 p.m. Eastern is ESPN2, and then 8 p.m. Eastern is FS1. And then Sundays on ESPN.
Ooh, I wonder if that's going to be right after The Last Dance or right before The Last Dance.
Oh yeah, The Last Dance on ESPN. It'll probably be beforehand.
Probably.
It'll probably be like an afternoon.
The Last Dance will go until 10. Yeah. Yeah, Sunday sounds like it's a fun day already. Can't go outside. Why not, whip up something nice on ESPN for us?
Oh yeah.
So that's awesome though. That's good.
And like this whole league, it turned out so much better than I thought it would be. You have all these guys, faces of the franchise for some of them, streaming, interacting with the chat, interacting with people watching. Like you go to a baseball game, you could talk to some of these athletes and it'll be like a minimal conversation. You can go into their streams and they'll be answering questions. Someone that's cool to watch, Tommy Canely, he's gotten into the stream action recently. When he's not playing in this league, he plays in an all Yankees Madden league. So he's going up against like
Oh,
Aaron Judge and like uh Clint Frazier, like other
that's
Yankee
pretty awesome.
players.
And they just play a whole different sport.
Yeah. And then Amir
Yes.
Garrett has really caught on to streaming. I remember when I interviewed him last year. He said
Yeah, I
he
was
didn't
gonna say
really
you.
he didn't really play MLB The Show. He's like, why, I'm already in it. And yeah, he's streaming, which is cool as well. He really enjoys the interaction.
Yeah, he interacted with you on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
I saw that when he won on that sacrifice bunt. We talked about it last week.
Mm-hmm.
Win at all costs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Win at all costs.
I so bad want to do a 2K tournament, but that's a whole different subject. Um,
I wish
so
2K
that's
still had their tournaments. They used to have them
yeah,
in older
2K.
games where you could play with like fantasy draft and all that, but now it's all you can do is just like the normal league, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah, I think I was able to create one, and I wasn't sure if it was cross compatible because I know you are
No.
not on Xbox One.
Hmm.
So I created it with this idea. We were just gonna throw it out there. We'll find 28 other people. Us two will have 30 teams, and just have fun with it while we're in quarantine. And then you shot me down with some horrible news. So,
Yeah,
but that's partially my fault. So,
yeah, don't have that. But yeah,
but
Players League, like I said, national TV. I'm definitely gonna tune in tomorrow. Should be fun to watch. Playoff games right there. I hope you guys tune in as well. I'd love to hear some feedback on it. If you guys did watch some of the streams, tweet at us. Let us know whose stream you watched. If you watched multiple streams, whose stream you enjoyed the most. I think we'll talk about it as like a whole recap again next week to round it out. But without further ado, let's get into the main sports action that happened. The NFL draft.
the NFL draft.
So it was all online. Roger Goodell in his basement announcing picks. It
You know
seemed to go
what? For what
smoothly.
it's worth, they did really well.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job. Um, I'm sure it seems awkward, especially for Goodell, who's been doing drafts for how long, and to sit there in his basement to have to announce it. I mean, it seemed like most of the coaches and the front office guys, they had their office set up, so they had the right setting. There's been players historically who have never gone to the draft. They always had a footage in their house. So it's the same concept. It's a little different, but I mean, they did it extremely well. The draft itself, some wild picks. There was some wild moves. I don't know. What was your reaction?
Sticking with like the presentation and stuff, I think this whole thing was actually like kind of bad in a sense because of how well it ran. And like, but we know the NFL, they make money off the draft, and cities, they'll never go to this style again unless they have to. But it was great. It ended up doing well. And I think Roger Goodell, he normally only reads out the first round picks. I think he had to read out like all of them pretty much.
Did he? So I only saw the first round. I saw a little bit of the second. So I didn't watch all the way through 7 rounds.
Hmm.
So if he had to do that, that's awesome because that's
Yeah.
dedication for one from the commissioner who takes a lot of heat as it is.
Yeah.
And the best part was he didn't have to stand up in front of a crowd and get booed by everybody. I think this is the first time ever.
Oh
So
yeah. I think there was at one point too, he was like standing up, and then he was standing up for like hours. So then he just sat down and started reading the picks then.
yeah, I mean yeah. Well, the nice thing was if I felt like the draft when it started, the picks were in a little bit quicker
Hmm.
this time around. You didn't have to worry about, or at least it didn't take as much time because you would have to give time for the player to go to the podium, shake hands with Goodell, take his picture. I just felt like it was
Interview.
drawn out. Yeah, so I mean, they got through it. I mean, it was probably your normal first round length. Um, Healy, what were you surprised by any picks? I mean, there's a couple that stand out to me obviously as a Packers fan.
Those are the ones that stand out to me. The Green Bay Packers, will get to them right away. First round, they draft a quarterback. Second round, they draft A
A
running
running
back.
back. There is I read into it. They have okay, so the quarterback, I have no explanation for other than they're trying to replicate what they did with Rodgers. They
Mhm.
drafted Rodgers when they had Favre. He sat behind Favre for a few years, 2 to 3 years, developed. Favre obviously being a genius. Um, Rodgers having the talent. It's I mean, there's a mental game to it, right? There's a
Mhm.
knowledge base. And I think what they're gonna try to do, they grab this Jordan Love. They traded up to get him in the first place, which I thought
Yeah.
was odd. But this quarterback from Utah State, who in his first 2 years, he put up good numbers. He has talent. Bunch of coaching changes, offensive scheme changes, players go, new players come, and he throws more interceptions in his last year. And people are like, what the heck happened? Is he not that okay? Maybe on like a job resume, you don't deal well with change, but with the right scheme, he might be okay. And we all know Green
Yeah.
Bay, I mean, they've always been a quarterback's team. They've had backups. They've had Brett Favre, Rodgers, Flynn has stepped up. Matt Flynn came up and threw like 6 touchdowns in a game and signed a huge contract with Seattle the next year.
Mhm.
So I think the idea is they found a guy with talent. He's got good size. I think he's like 6'5". And I think the point is, for one, it can draw up competition, which might bring more out of Rodgers. Because Rodgers, I mean, let's face it, he's had no competition. His accuracy is not the same. So maybe this will spark something, but also maybe it'll be fun for Rodgers to be like, I was in his position. Let me show him how it's done, but also not necessarily coach him, but mentor him. He's a young
Yeah.
cat. He's young. You can mold him. So I think the quarterback move, very questionable. Wasn't the biggest fan considering we need a receiver. We need a weapon to help complement the offense. We have Devontae Adams, great second round pick in the draft. I don't know how many years ago now. We have nobody else really. We have guys who, if they're open, they'll grab the ball most of the time. But like, there's no Cobb, there's no Jordy Nelson, there's no Greg Jennings, Donald Driver. We don't have multiple receivers. The second round pick who they drafted, which is AJ Dillon, I believe,
Yep.
big guy, reminds me a lot of Derrick Henry.
Mhm.
Now you're probably thinking they have Showtime at running back. They have Aaron Jones, who just led the league in touchdowns. Well, he's on his contract year. So I'm sure they looked at next year's potentials. I'm sure next year's draft, and I don't know, but my theory is they were probably like, what if we don't keep Aaron Jones? Because he's going to want a
Yeah.
max contract. You score almost 20 touchdowns any season, you're going to get a max contract. What if we can't keep him? Why not go with, I mean, look at Tennessee. They have a workhorse in Derrick Henry. This guy's quads are the size of my whole body. Each quad is the size of my body. And I think it's a weird move. I think it could work. I just
Yeah.
don't know how I feel about it yet as a Packer fan. What were you thinking?
So the Jamal or AJ Dillon pick, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are entering their contract years. So maybe here's the thing. Maybe they didn't draft a wide receiver because there's probably some wide receivers available to trade for that maybe they trade like Aaron Jones for one of them and maybe like a pick
Maybe.
for next year. Who knows with that? That one was a weird pick. The Jordan Love one, I think maybe a little early in the draft, but I understand it. Aaron Rodgers' health history the past few years hasn't been too great. He's getting older,
It's
so like
questionable,
any
yeah.
hit could like knock him out of the game. So, with that being said, they wanted a backup. They also wanted to start getting a guy ready. There was a funny thing. I think they asked Aaron Rodgers about it, and if he would help out Jordan Love, and he'd be like, uh, "I think it'd be hypocritical if I didn't because Brett Favre didn't help out Rodgers at all. Brett Favre
Yeah,
didn't want
he
to.
sat behind Favre, and well, Favre knew. I don't know if Favre really truly knew that he was going to get replaced by Rod. I mean, who thinks that the rookie's going to replace the vet.
Hmm.
But Rodgers has to understand, like, Brady's one of a kind. Brady's past 40. He played on a team where he got protected for so long. Rodgers does not get protected like that. Like you said, if he gets hit, that guy on your shirt, Khalil Mack, hits him, I'll donate to the GoFundMe for the funeral because he breaks easily. I mean, I love the guy. Do I think he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time? Of course. I'm only, if he's listening, I gotta say that. But like you you have to understand there's a business to it. You got to protect the franchise. And Green Bay's been
Yeah.
a winning franchise for how many years now? And
Yeah.
the most important position on any team is quarterback. Always.
Yeah, that was another point I was going to get to. Green Bay, I don't think they like to rebuild. So they are getting ready to not have that buffer period. And also, Jordan Love the pick in general. Love Jordan Love from what he does on the field. You were pointing out like interception stats or whatever. His comparison to what, so I watched film on him from like his past year with a couple friends who like doing draft stuff, and they were comparing him to like Pat Mahomes. He was comparable to Mahomes with how he moved, his arm and everything. And in the film, he did have picks, but his wide receivers last year were garbage. They
He
were
had, yeah,
dropping balls, and a few of the drop balls turned into interceptions while watching the film. So they got a great upside quarterback. Like, he's not guaranteed to be as good like as Joe Burrow or maybe like Tua, but he has that potential like Pat Mahomes where he could get up into like the MVP conversation. And also another
yeah,
fact I saw as well, Joe Burrow drafted, he's 24 years old. Let's say Aaron Rodgers lasts 3 years or something and he's done with the Packers. When in 3 years, Jordan Love's going to be 24. So like, he's only 21. Like, if Aaron Rodgers is done in 3 years, well, so be it. He could sit behind him for a couple years. He's young, and he'll get some help in the mental game and hopefully learn the offense. But yeah, Jordan Love, watching his tape, he was a good pick. It's just
yeah.
odd for the Packers, especially when they're at the end of Rodgers and you want to try to get another Super Bowl with him, that you end up spending like a first round pick on it, and then end up not drafting a wide receiver at all.
That was the weird part. They went off, they grabbed a tight end, they grabbed some weapons, but uh, Green Bay normally loves their tight ends, but historically the past 2 or 3 years, they haven't really utilized tight ends like they normally do. I know there was one year where Cook made a huge catch against the Cowboys in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. So they do use them when they need them. Um, I feel like they're up to something and they're geniuses. They run a great franchise. I mean, granted, they don't win Super Bowls like the Patriots, or they don't win multiple Super Bowls like the Steelers have in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But there's something there. Maybe it's next year's draft class. Maybe there's next year's free agency. Who knows what they're looking at? We don't really know because I didn't even realize Jamal Williams it's his contract year too, and
Yep.
he's pretty good. He can start on a few teams.
He could be another trade piece to like try to get a wide receiver.
Yeah, and they don't need a number one. Give us a number two. Give
Yeah.
Green Bay a number two. They just don't have it right now. That's the problem.
Yeah, you just need someone that can catch the ball. There's like a video or a tweet I saw, and the wide receivers of the Packers cost like Rodgers about like 600 yards or something last year. Just
Oh
some
yeah.
drops. So, yeah, about that. Going over to the Bears. I didn't really follow the draft too much this past week, but like looking at the Bears picks, I don't really know what to think. They drafted a tight end. It was hilarious seeing everyone on Twitter be like, they already have 10 tight ends on the roster. What are you doing? How many of those guys can you
Yeah,
name? How many can you name? Jimmy Graham. That's it. And Jimmy
that's
Graham
it.
signed a 1-year deal. So signing or drafting this tight end, It could be like a buffer year for him, or they maybe run like a 2 tight end set, especially maybe to work around Trubisky. I think the 2 tight end set might be decent. Get those shorter routes, build up a run game a little bit, and
I'm
just get
wondering
a
if the NFL
checkdowns.
is gonna approach the 2 tight end set more often, like heavy this year. And the only reason why I say that is because Tom Brady, OJ Howard didn't get traded. The Bears draft, what's it, Met? Is you pronounce his last name Met?
I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it starts with a K, so I don't know.
KMET, yeah. So
Yeah.
whatever, he's a very talented kid from Illinois. Maybe they do run the 2 tight end set. I know the Bears have been trying their best to bring in tight ends to solidify that tight end position. Especially Zach. Who is it that got hurt? Zach Miller?
Yeah, and then they did have Trey Burton, who they did release. But yeah, Zach
Yeah,
Miller was the guy.
Trey Burton, I was surprised. He was supposed to, I mean, that dude had raw talent. Comet, if that's how you pronounce his name, from Notre Dame, looks pretty good. They had a few other, I would say, some questionable picks. They did draft a lot of defensive players.
Yeah.
Um, they went extremely heavy on defense.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. 2 cornerbacks, which Prince Mukamara did end up leaving. So they needed to fill a spot there. And also just I think they just needed more cornerbacks in general. So that was a good I feel like those were decent picks. I didn't realize they drafted 2 until now. Drafted an outside linebacker. They did draft a wide receiver in the 5th round. We'll have to see how he is. Taylor Gabriel ended up not re-signing with the Bears, so maybe Mooney could slip right in there. They do have Anthony Miller still. They drafted a tackle late. I wish they kind of would have drafted a tackle earlier on in the draft, but maybe there wasn't enough good guys where they just let a guy fall and draft him instead. And then they drafted a guard. So both 7th rounders. We'll have to see how they do. Lineman is a key position that they need. We'll have to see how those guys do. And in the undrafted field, the Bears did sign Khalil Mack's brother. So
I did see that. I did see, hey, that might draw some more competition. His brother might be just as well. It's not gonna be just as good. Nobody's as good as Khalil Mack, but maybe he's got some sort of special talent.
yeah,
He comes in with the second set and
yeah,
causes some disruption.
maybe he has some upside, and also with playing with Khalil Mack, they could get him on his program, and he ends up being something. That'd be a
Yeah,
cool
and he's
story.
young. Yeah, he was undrafted, so we'll see what number he decides to go with. Because obviously Khalil's 52. So
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to see there. The obvious picks: the Bengals went with Joe Burrow. The Redskins went with Chase Young. The 49ers, I feel like, had a decent draft. They drafted that Brandon Ayuk guy who we talked about last week. They drafted a D tackle. They also drafted an offensive tackle, and they traded for
they
Williams,
traded.
right? Is that his name? Trent Williams from Washington, because Joe Staley retired. So,
Yeah. Then they traded, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they trade away? Um, who did they trade away? They traded. I could have sworn. Maybe I was dreaming this. Didn't they trade one of their receivers?
uh, I don't know the trade details for that. Can't tell you.
Hmm. Could have sworn. Maybe yeah, they traded Marquise Goodwin.
Ooh,
They
okay.
traded him to the Eagles, which the Eagles have made, I would say, a decent splash
Oh,
with the
yeah.
draft. They drafted Jalen Hurts,
Which was
who,
surprising.
very surprising, but this is a guy who is an athlete. And if they do anything to mirror another team, I think of the New Orleans Saints. They have
Hmm.
great quarterback. I mean, the Saints have a great quarterback. The Eagles have a good quarterback. And maybe they run those same sets that the Saints run, because
Yeah.
obviously they have uh
Taysom
I can't
Hill.
even think of his. Yeah, Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
So that's where I think they're going to utilize him until who knows.
Yeah, we'll have to see how good he is. I think the surprising pick with that though, I just don't. I did not think Hurts was a second round draft pick. I think they reached a little bit on him, but we'll have to see in the end how he performs. I think he could have dropped at least another round or two.
I was going to say third round for sure, maybe fourth, maybe, but for sure third round.
Yeah, definitely interesting pick there. Another quarterback drafted when they do have a quarterback on the team. The New York Giants had a solid draft. They drafted Andrew Thomas. They drafted another offensive tackle, another guard. They are getting ready for Daniel Jones next year. They're making sure he starts getting protected. Their needs online for ESPN, they drafted 4 of the 5. The only thing they didn't draft was a wide receiver. But they drafted linebackers and they drafted a bunch of corners. Their only offensive picks were linemen. So decent there. And then
That's not a bad move for the Giants. I think that's the biggest thing is protect Daniel Jones at all costs. I mean, the kid has an arm. Receiver would have been nice for them to draft, but again, this could be he's very young, so I don't know if they're planning on going out to win. Well, every team goes out and plans to win every game, but I don't know if they really look if they're looking. I feel like they're looking at the future right now. There had to be some good linemen for them to not draft a receiver, but again, this is like one of those where Green Bay didn't draft a receiver, so it makes you
yeah.
just wonder, like, is there enough? This next draft class is going to be it.
Yeah. We'll definitely have to see with that. The big ones, wide receivers, Ruggs going to the Raiders, and also CeeDee Lamb going to the Cowboys.
The
That was a big one.
Cowboys.
He's gonna be
Whoa.
nice there. He's gonna be nice, especially because they have who was it? Who was it from the Raiders?
Oh, they have Amari Cooper to
Cooper.
complement him on the other side. Yeah.
I don't know why I was thinking of the old wide receiver Toomer. Was his first name Amari as well?
Amari Toomer from the Giants?
Yeah.
The dude hasn't
Oh, it's
played. Amari
Amani.
Toomer is
Amani
Amani
Toomer.
Toomer. He hasn't played in like 15 years.
Yeah, since 2008, he hasn't played.
So you might as well start dropping names like Ike Hilliard.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
so that's where the stud wide receivers went. Justin Herbert going to the Chargers. That was nice.
That was a good pick. I have a friend who's a Chargers fan, our friend Mark.
Mhm.
He actually he was happy about the pick, and I had mentioned, oh, Jordan Love, and he's like, well, I was actually hoping the Chargers would draft Jordan Love instead of
Ooh, he
Herbert.
knows.
So I was like, okay, that makes me a little bit at ease knowing that somebody who had a better draft pick ended up going with Justin Herbert
Herbert.
instead of Jordan
Yeah.
Love. Yeah, so that's
It's more of the guaranteed pick, and you know what you're getting compared to
yeah, exactly.
betting on potential.
Boom or bust, right?
Especially
At this
because you
point.
need a starter right away. Phillip
Oh
Rivers
yeah,
no longer there.
he's gone.
So you had to go with the more confident pick and who could be better now.
That's true. So, but overall, it was a good draft.
Yeah,
I would say
the losers have to be who's the big loser of the draft, do you think?
a lot of people say Green Bay, but I actually beg to differ. I think actually it goes both ways. A lot of Packer fans are upset.
Yeah,
Um,
just because it's a
Worst draft
quarterback.
grades? I mean, I don't know. Chicago had a weird draft, but even then, it wasn't that bad. I wouldn't even consider them the worst 5 or worst 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't know football, and I don't know like draft enough to be able to give like a super solid grade. But
Yeah,
if anyone
they gave Green Bay the lowest mark. for their draft
Mm-hmm.
because they're targeting players that they don't generally need. So I don't know. I guess I can agree with that, especially if we don't win with Rodgers because we decided not to attack the positions that they needed. I would say Green Bay had definitely a questionable draft.
Yeah. We'll just have to see on that though, if it all pans out and whatever. But that's pretty much the NFL news. I know. I feel like there was something else mixed in there as well with like trades or like signings, but I can't remember at the moment. All I know is that Washington traded Trent Williams, the 49ers traded Marquise Goodwin, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So we can move on to like NBA news.
NBA, there's
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago gets their GM from Philadelphia.
Huge, huge move. And there's so many reasons why. As a Bulls fan, I am happy that they're finally making moves. I think somebody finally put it Reinsdorf, Reinsdorf's the whole family's head that this isn't a winning culture. It's not about buddy buddy. You like this guy, like let's keep that. That the fans are the most important, and you're letting us down in the major metropolitan city of Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
who housed 6 championships with Michael Jordan, as we see on The Last Dance.
Yeah. Definitely a big move. I feel like they got two solid guys. The guy that they signed from the Nuggets as the executive, and then now they signed Philadelphia's executive as
The GM,
the
he
GM.
steps up as that was John Paxson's position before,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, and I think it was huge. Marc Eversley, obviously the 76ers have a playoff team. Um, the history of Chicago recently has been
Not great.
we have nothing to look forward to. We can't challenge LeBron in the East. We can't challenge anybody. We had a good run for a year or two. We relied on Derrick Rose, who got overworked by Thibodeau. Um, they let Thibodeau go, who I think was a good coach. I think maybe he had some other issues,
Mm-hmm.
but the next big move, and if they don't they don't do it, I don't know why they wouldn't, but
Jim
you got to get rid of
Boylan.
Jim Boylan.
Yep.
Fire that guy.
Yeah.
Shine his bald head up, stick him sideways, and toss him. He's
Yeah,
gone.
he needs to go next. Now that they finally have the two guys in which could make up a great team, you're gonna need a coach in there that can like put it all and make it work. I do feel like Marc Eversley is a good one though, because the 76ers and Nuggets, they've built great teams over the past few years. They use their guys that they draft. They've signed key guys. It's looking up for the Bulls. But like you said, Jim Boylan has to go, and they need a new one.
Yeah, Jim Boylan is not the coach. I mean, if the season returns, which they're going to start letting teams go practice in their facilities with cities and states that are easing up on the quarantine, I think the biggest thing is sure let Boylan finish out the year. Let him prove
Yeah.
that he has what it takes, and I'm going to tell you right now, he's going to crumble like a cheap brand cookie in the package. He is going to break. He is horrible. We saw him live. We saw the schemes that he runs. He's not trying to find an identity for this team. I've never seen such a young core with so much talent where you're not like, besides Zach LaVine,
Mm-hmm.
you don't, everybody else, it's a free for all. I couldn't tell you who's going to be the second leading scorer on any game at all. So I think the biggest thing is maybe Markkanen isn't the guy. Maybe he is the guy. I think Markkanen,
I'm leaning
I don't know
towards
how I feel,
no. I'm leaning towards he's just gonna be an average.
but maybe the coach needs to get it out of him.
Yeah. Maybe a new guy comes in and they figure it out. Like Also, I think he's there for another season. So if he's not the guy and they get a new coach and he's not playing well, they could trade him next.
Exactly. And honestly, Markkinen, as young as he will bring in at least a draft pick, and if not, then maybe another mid-level talent. It could. I mean, at that point, if we have a team, it could be a veteran that we need.
Yeah.
So
We'll
big
just have to
news
see with
for
that.
Chicago. Outside of that, not really much going on with the NBA other than
The
teams can
Last
start practicing
Dance.
soon. The Last Dance. The Last Dance. Oh man,
Episodes
episodes 3 and
3 and
4.
4. Dennis Rodman and the Detroit Pistons episode.
Wow.
Rodman,
Wow.
he's so interesting to learn about from his like almost pretty much attempted suicide in the Detroit parking lot to him getting traded and then him going to the Bulls after he was like, "What? They want me there?" And then when he was with the Bulls, he was just on another level with rebounding and stuff. He played his role. Unbelievable. And then the craziest thing about the episode right there was him going to Vegas for 48 hours in the middle of a season.
Middle of the season, load management. Load management. He not only that, but he partied his
Yeah.
ass off. And it wasn't just 48 hours. He asked for 48 hours. Jordan looked at him and was like, "Shit, I need a vacation. I'm holding the team up." Robin's like, this is me. You know what you're getting with me."
Yeah.
And that was the one thing they all worked with Rodman. They knew his talent level was through the roof, but they
Yeah.
also knew he had a mental issue.
Yeah.
They let him go. And I think the funniest part was they went and knocked on his hotel door in Vegas, and Carmen Electra was hiding under the blanket,
Yep.
which I thought was hilarious. And they literally said, "Pack your shit." And he showed up to the practice in his PJs. In his PJs.
Yeah.
Rodman is the biggest savage for that. He is the reason for load management. He's started that. And it just goes to show that there's a fine line between physical and mental, because I mean, especially when you're playing with Jordan and Pippen, who took out Detroit already, and Rodman back when he was with Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a mental game to it. And I mean, most players probably would just enjoy a day off, and he had to go party. And how about the scene where he left the stadium drinking a beer and got right
Yeah.
on a motorcycle? What?
That was in Vegas, I think. That was right
Yeah, I
when he
don't know
got
where.
that was right when he got to Vegas for
Is
48
that what it
hours.
was?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was nuts.
The part of the story, I don't know if you could clear it up. When they were like, "Yeah, we knocked on his door." Why were the other people in Vegas?
They flew out there.
Oh.
Yeah, I think they like knew where he was. I think the thing was Jordan or somebody.
Oh, they didn't know when he would come back, so they made sure he came back.
They basically were like, "We're going to get him," and they basically went and grabbed him. And I think Jordan, the way I've never really heard Jordan talk too much outside of a speech and here and there on what they show on TV. But the way he explains these stories, I think I love the guy even more outside of his play.
Oh
He's
yeah.
the way he's explaining, he's like, "What the fuck?" He's like, "I need a vacation." He's like, "We went in, we grabbed him." And he even said, he's like, "Me and Scotty, we knew, like, because Rodman would try to fight and they had to hold him back during a fight, and they just started laughing
Yeah.
because they're like, dude, he's a handful, but this is how we're gonna win."
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he was a key
it was
piece.
oh yeah, it was huge. So that was episode 3. And then episode 4 was Phil, the fourth biggest piece, probably the biggest piece for that franchise. Dude was popping acid like it was his job before he ever even became a professional coach. He was a hippie. He is a
Yeah.
hippie. He's a Zen Buddhist, and he believes in everything. Everything is a mental game, and I think that was huge. Learning I've heard about him more so when he took over the Knicks role in the front office. They talked about him a lot
Mm-hmm.
more recently, but reading where he came from and how he coached in Ecuador, I can't remember the country. I sound ignorant right now, and it was like a country where they kill officials for officiating a bad game, and you
Oh
see him
yeah.
going off on a ref, and you're like, dude, this isn't even like you don't even like you're not from here. And so the dude's a genius, and he I'm trying to think of the guy's name with the triangle offense. He kept pushing it and pushing it,
Doug
and
Collins?
not Doug Collins. Doug Collins wouldn't. He refused. It
Oh,
was Tex
yeah.
Winter. Tex Winter was like an assistant, and he
Mhm.
kept trying to push. Well, he's pushing on Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson's like, "This is a genius like offense. I've never seen this," and he loved it. And he learned it. He studied it, and he's like, "Doug, we should do it." And Doug's like, "No, we're just gonna force feed Jordan the ball," which works. Jordan was great. And then finally, when Phil Jackson took over in that triangle offense, it was
Oh,
like
man.
us watching a symphony. It was just everything just worked perfectly, perfectly. So to learn that, and obviously Phil, we know was very successful because
Won
not only did he
11
win 6,
championships.
he won and went 5 more with the Lakers.
3 almost immediately after the Bulls.
Nuts. Nuts.
He won 8 championships in a span of like 12 years.
Yeah. That's
Insane
I to
stuff.
me to me he's the greatest coach in the NBA history. I don't see how he's not. He did it. Greg Popovich is like right there. Greg
Mhm.
Popovich, arguably,
You
they
could
could
have
be
an
tied in
argument.
my book.
Yeah. Yeah, you
They
could
could be
have an
tied in my
argument.
book. Yeah.
Just with how
Um,
Greg might not have as many championships, but if you see what he put together and the teams
oh
he
man,
uses every year, that
he
that
didn't
right
need a
there.
Jordan. He
Oh,
didn't need a Jordan or a Kobe.
you just needed
So,
guys that followed his system.
and one thing too, to people who hate on LeBron James, saying, "Oh, LeBron fans should cry watching this doc." I just want to point out the fact that this is, if anything, given LeBron more on his plate as to why you should respect him as a player because he didn't have the best coach of all time. I still think Michael is number one to start. But those who actually hate on LeBron and don't think he's a top 5 player, for one, you either don't watch the sport, two, um, you're just, I think it's Michael Jordan fanboys. Um, but it just goes to show what he does. And I'm taking away from the Last Dance right now. It just goes to
Mhm.
show what he was able to do without a great coach. He had Eric Spoelstra. Every team he left never made the playoffs. There's a lot to it, and I would love to have an episode where we debate why LeBron could potentially be better than Michael.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think he is. I think Michael would take him. If you go 1 versus 1, or even
Yeah.
the Heat versus Bulls is a different story. But anyways, back to the Last Dance. What I'm getting at is Phil Jackson is a great coach. The supporting cast, we're only in episode 4, or I
Mhm.
guess 5 and 6 is coming up. So I'm like, in my head, I don't know what else is to come. Obviously, the rest of the season, there is a point where Dennis Rodman, I think it was this year, skipped an NBA Finals practice to go be on WWF or WCW for pro wrestling on TV.
Mhm.
So if they talk about that, I'm curious to see what other crazy shit is gonna happen with just with Rodman alone.
Yeah, this week though, oh, tears are gonna be flowing. There was a little preview. Kobe Bryant is gonna be in it. They're probably gonna
Oh
talk about him
man.
a little bit.
Oh
Oh,
man.
I
I'm not
I am
ready.
not ready either. I'm getting sad thinking about it. I did hear
Yeah.
though that Kobe Bryant did have cameras following him his last season. So maybe we see a documentary for that, kind of like
For
this.
Kobe, yeah.
We'll
We
have to
will.
see with that. But yeah, episodes 5 and 6 this weekend. We'll recap them again next week. Some news that I just saw. This was published a little earlier in the afternoon. We'll talk about it briefly here. Going back to baseball, MLB is discussing to start in late June and playing at home stadiums with realigned divisions.
Okay, so this is what we were talking about before. What you were talking about. like a customized season to let these guys play and
Yeah,
not travel too far.
yeah, and at home. Before it was Arizona and then Florida. This time it would be at their parks. They'd play at least 100 games, and then no fans. Here's the twist, though. There would be 3 divisions, 10 teams each. You'd combine the East, Central, and West divisions together. So AL will be with NL.
Ooh,
And yeah, we would have to see how the playoffs are for that. It's probably like a best of 8 teams or whatever, best 10 teams to make it, or like top so many teams from each division. But yeah,
that'd be
another
awesome.
another interesting concept just to get this MLB season going. It's just a discussion, so we don't know officially, but I saw it and wanted to talk about it on the podcast just to get it out there.
That'd be awesome. We got to stay in the loop with that. I mean, we need baseball at this point, and I think this would be. That means we'll have Cubs versus Sox, probably more than just 4 games, which would be
Yeah.
great.
Oh yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. If that happens, oh my God, they'd probably play like 8, maybe if they're gonna play division games, like a lot of division games, they'll probably play them like 9 times, 3
At
series.
least in 100
Yeah.
games. Yeah, sounds about right.
But yeah, that's probably going to do it for this week's episode of the Stay Room Only podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at SROnlyPod. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure you hit that download button and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a rating. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. You can follow my personal page at the Healy6. You can follow Goose.
I am iGoose, 4 O's, Instagram. Go ahead, follow me on Twitter as well. Again, we like to stay interactive. Follow the SR Only Pod. As Healy just mentioned, Instagram, Twitter. We like to throw out polls. We like to ask you guys questions. So go ahead and follow us so we can all stay interactive. And until next week.
Yeah, we will see you guys later.